The second battle began at dawn. Captain Yoon watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as the Cravath fleet approached. 24,000 bioships, a dark wave spreading across space. She felt fear grip her heart, but she did not let it show. Admiral Kang's strategy was ruthless. He had placed unmanned defense platforms in specific positions. They were bait. The Cravath would be drawn to destroy them. When they did, they would enter kill zones. It was brutal mathematics. Trade machines for enemy lives. The swarm took the bait. Thousands of bioships swarmed the platforms. Human and concordate forces opened fire from hidden positions. The kill zones worked perfectly. In the first hour, 3,000 Cravath ships were destroyed. But Kang's strategy required more sacrifice. He ordered the evacuation of 3 civilian mining stations. Once empty, he detonated their fusion reactors. The explosions created massive debris fields. The Cravath advance slowed. They had to navigate through wreckage. Concordate officers watched in horror. Those stations represented decades of work, billions in resources. Kang had destroyed them without hesitation. Velshara understood the necessity, but it still felt wrong. This was not how civilized beings fought. Something unexpected began to happen. Concordate forces started adapting human tactics. A Velaran destroyer captain named Relkan watched human ships use damaged Cravath vessels as cover. He tried the same approach. It worked. His ship survived while 3 others in his squadron were destroyed. Other Concordate captains noticed. They began to copy human maneuvers, moving aggressively instead of defensively, using wreckage for ambushes, accepting calculated risks to achieve better positions. They were learning to fight like humans. Velshara watched this evolution from her flagship. Her officers were changing, learning to embrace controlled aggression, learning to accept losses as necessary costs. It disturbed her deeply, but she could not deny the results. The Concordate fleet was inflicting casualties at rates never before achieved. She opened a channel to Admiral Kang. Her voice was quiet and troubled. "You are changing us." Kang's response was practical and blunt. "You will change back when the war is over. Right now you need to survive." Velshara hoped he was right. She hoped her people could return to who they were before. Captain Yoon led a strike force toward the heart of the Cravath formation. Intelligence suggested there was a massive command nexus somewhere in the center of the swarm. Destroy it, and the entire fleet would fall apart. 23 ships followed her into hell. The Cravath defenses were overwhelming. Yoon's ships took heavy fire from all directions. One by one, vessels were destroyed. Captains she had known for years died in bright explosions. But the survivors kept pushing forward. They had a mission. They would complete it or die trying. Only 7 ships reached the Nexus. The Indomitable was heavily damaged. Life support was failing on multiple decks. The medical bay was overwhelmed with wounded. Engineering crews worked desperately to keep the ship functional. But Yoon refused to withdraw. They were so close. Lieutenant Commander Choi prepared his Marines for the final assault. They would board the Nexus directly, fight through whatever defenses the Cravath had, destroy the command center from the inside. 96 enhanced soldiers loaded into boarding pods. Most of them knew they would not come back. The pods launched. They punched through the Nexus hull and deployed Marines into an alien environment. The interior of the ship was biological. Living walls that pulsed with strange energy. The air was toxic. The gravity was wrong. But the Marines adapted. They always adapted. Cravath bioforms attacked immediately. They were massive creatures with multiple limbs and acid blood. They moved fast despite their size. The Marines held their ground. They had trained for this. They knew how to fight in close quarters. Choi led from the front. His team fought room by room, corridor by corridor. They used demolition charges to destroy walls, flamethrowers to clear passages. Every meter was bought with blood. Marines fell, but the survivors kept moving forward. After 2 hours of brutal fighting, Choi reached the Nexus core. It was a massive biological computer, pulsing with alien consciousness, controlling thousands of ships across the battle space. He planted the final charges. His hands were steady despite his exhaustion. He ordered his surviving Marines to evacuate. 23 made it back to the pods. Choi stayed behind. The remote detonation system had failed. Someone needed to trigger the charges manually. He knew what that meant. He opened a final communication to Captain Yoon. His voice was calm. "At peace. Tell them it mattered. Tell them we were more than weapons. Then he triggered the charges. The Nexus exploded in a brilliant flash. Across the entire battlespace, Kravath ships went dark. Their coordination was severed. The hive mind was broken. Thousands of bioships became thousands of individual targets. Confused, directionless, easy prey. The combined human and concordate fleet tore through them. It was not a battle anymore. It was extermination. Ship after ship was destroyed. The swarm could not coordinate a defense, could not retreat in an organized fashion. They died alone in the dark. 14 hours after the battle began, the last Kravath vessel was destroyed. The Velkin sector was safe, but the cost was terrible. The human fleet had lost 62 ships. Concordat losses exceeded 200 vessels. Over 40,000 humans were dead. Concordat casualties numbered in the hundreds of thousands, but the sector stood. Billions of civilians had survived. The stations were safe. The colonies were protected. The sacrifice had meaning. Admiral Kang broadcast to all survivors. His voice was heavy with grief. "This is Admiral Kang Dae-sung. The threat has been stopped. All forces stand down. Begin search and rescue operations. To our concordate allies, it was an honor to fight beside you." Captain Yoon stood in the ruins of the Marine barracks. The space felt empty. Too empty. She stared at Choi's bunk. His personal effects were still there. A datapad with family photos. A book on ancient military tactics. Small things that showed he was human. Not just a weapon. Dr. Park found her there. They stood together in silence. Finally, Yoon spoke. Her voice was raw with pain. "How many more, Park?" "How many more until they accept us?" Park had no answer. He only had data. Reports from concordate space. Public opinion was shifting, but not in the way humanity hoped. Some saw humans as heroes. Others saw them as necessary monsters. Useful but dangerous. Tools to be used in emergencies but kept at a distance otherwise. The debate continued across every alien world and station. Talron was summoned to testify before the High Assembly. As the person who activated the beacon, he was responsible for bringing humans to concordate space. The hearing was broadcast across the entire sector. Billions watched. He was questioned for hours. Did he understand what humanity was? Did he know the violence he was inviting? Could he have found another solution? Talron answered every question honestly. He admitted his fear, his doubts, his uncertainty. Then came the final question, the one that mattered most. Knowing what you know now, would you activate that beacon again? The chamber was silent. Everyone waited for his answer. Talron looked directly at the assembly members. He thought about everything he had seen. The violence, the death, the horror, but also the sacrifice, the courage, the determination to protect others at any cost. He gave his answer clearly. "I watched Lieutenant Commander Choi Byung-ho die to save my people. I have walked the corridors of human ships and seen their wounded. I have spoken with their leaders. Yes, they terrify me. Their capacity for violence is beyond our understanding. But I have also seen their capacity for sacrifice. They came when no one else would. They fought when we could not. So yes, I would activate that beacon again. And I would hope they would answer." The testimony went viral. It was shared across every communication network. People watched it again and again. Slowly, opinions began to change. Not everywhere, not everyone, but enough. Enough to matter. The High Assembly announced its decision. Humanity would be offered associate membership in the Concordate. Not full membership, but a beginning. They could trade, establish embassies, maintain a military presence. It was a compromise that satisfied no one. But it was something. Admiral Kang accepted the decision with diplomatic grace. In private, he told his officers the truth. "We proved we are not monsters. That is enough for now. The rest will come with time." They all hoped he was right. A memorial service was held for all the fallen. Human and concordate crews stood together. They mourned their dead as brothers and sisters in arms. It was an imperfect beginning. But it was a beginning, and sometimes that was all you could ask for. The Concordate High Assembly met on Thelis Prime. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from 200 species. For the first time in 3 centuries, they could not agree. The debate was loud and angry. Representative Khosril from the Valoran Unity stood and spoke with passion. The humans had saved billions of lives. They had fought when no one else could. They deserved immediate full membership in the Concordate. They deserved military alliance status. They deserved respect. Representative Thaindor from the scientific collective disagreed strongly. The humans were too dangerous. Their capacity for violence was beyond anything the Concordat had ever seen. They were incompatible with Concordat values. They would corrupt the peaceful nature of their civilization. The debate revealed something important. The Concordat was deeply divided. Some species believed humanity had saved them from extinction. Others believed they had invited a predator into their home. The arguments continued for hours with no resolution. On the Indomitable, Captain Yoon walked through the medical bay. Her wounded crew was recovering slowly. 87 people had died on her ship alone. She stopped at the bed of Ensign Han Bora. The young woman had lost both legs when her console exploded. She was sedated. Her future was uncertain. Yoon felt the weight of every decision she had made, every order she had given, every life lost under her command. Dr. Park found her standing there in silence. They talked quietly about the Concordat's reaction. Park shared intelligence he had gathered. Many Concordat species had never experienced total war. Their conflicts were limited, almost ritualized. They could not understand what humans considered normal military operations. To them, humans did not fight wars. Humans waged extinction events. Yoon's response was bitter. We came to help. We saved millions of lives, and they fear us for it. Park had no good answer. They both knew the situation was complicated. Talrin received permission to visit the Indomitable. It was the first time a Concordat scientist had been allowed on a human warship. Everything about it disturbed him. The ship was designed for survival. Critical systems were separated and armored. Everything had backups. The crew quarters were small and simple. The entire vessel felt like a weapon designed by people who expected disaster at any moment. Talrin interviewed crew members. He learned about Earth's history. The wars that killed billions, the environmental disasters that nearly destroyed their civilization, the diseases that wiped out entire populations. He realized something important. Humanity's entire civilization was built on survival. Every human on this ship was descended from people who survived countless disasters. They were shaped by their world, made into what they were by necessity, not choice. Lieutenant Commander Choi gave Talrin a tour of the Marine barracks. Talrin watched the enhanced soldiers train. Their bodies were modified to survive in environments that would kill any Concordat species instantly. They were faster, stronger, and more resilient than normal humans. Choi explained the Vanguard program with cold, clinical precision. Talrin realized these soldiers were not normal people anymore. They were living weapons, created because humanity needed them to survive. It was horrifying and sad at the same time. Then the long-range sensors detected something terrible. A new Cravath fleet was emerging from dark space. This one was 3 times larger than the first. The swarm had decided the Velkin sector was worth a major effort. Admiral Kang sent a request to Earth for reinforcements. The response was complicated. Political pressure from multiple nations demanded the fleet withdraw. Humanity was not part of the Concordat. This was not their fight. Why should human lives be spent defending aliens who feared them? Kang gathered his fleet and addressed every ship. He gave them a choice. They could return to Earth with no shame, or they could stay and fight. The decision was theirs. The vote was unanimous. Every single ship chose to stay. Kang sent a message back to Earth Command. It was simple and direct. We are not fighting for the Concordat. We are fighting because someone has to. Earth Command did not respond, but they did not order the fleet to withdraw either. Velshara received orders from the High Assembly. They were unprecedented. The Concordat fleet would support the humans, but Admiral Kang would have tactical command. The most advanced military coalition in the galaxy was admitting it did not know how to fight this war. Velshara contacted Kang directly. She brought her command staff to the Indomitable for planning. The meeting was tense. Kang presented his strategy. It required using civilian stations as bait. It required sacrificing defense platforms to create kill zones. It required accepting heavy casualties. The tactics were brutal. They went against everything the Concordat believed about warfare. Velshara hesitated. Her officers looked uncomfortable. This was not how civilized beings fought wars. Kang was blunt in his response. You can keep your values and die, or you can learn from us and survive. Your choice. Velshara felt anger rise in her chest. but she could not argue with his logic. The Cravath would not respect their values. The swarm would not let them surrender with honor. They had to fight the way humans fought, or they would lose. That evening, Dr. Park shared a meal with Talrin. They talked about their worlds. Park described Earth's oceans that could swallow cities, mountains that touched the sky, storms that could flatten entire regions. Talrin described his homeworld. It was peaceful, safe. The most dangerous thing there was a dietary allergen. Park admitted something he had never told anyone. He envied Talrin, envied growing up without fear, envied living on a world that did not try to kill you every day. Talrin was surprised. Humans seemed so confident, so strong. He did not realize they carried such pain. Captain Yoon recorded a message for Ensign Han's family. She explained that their daughter was a hero, that her sacrifice mattered, that the crew would never forget her. But privately, Yoon wondered if any of this was worth it. So many dead, so many wounded, and the aliens still feared them. She found unexpected comfort in a conversation with Velshara. The alien commander had her own doubts, her own pain. They were both leaders carrying impossible weights. They both made decisions that cost lives. In that moment, they understood each other perfectly. Lieutenant Commander Choi sat alone in the observation deck. He watched the stars and thought about what he had become. Another enhanced soldier, Sergeant Ko Minji, joined him. They sat in silence for a long time. They were both living reminders of what humanity had to do to survive. Minji broke the silence. "Do you think they will ever stop being afraid of us?" Choi thought about the question carefully. He remembered the looks on concordant faces when they saw him. The fear, the disgust, the horror. He gave his honest answer. "Would you?" Minji nodded slowly. She understood. They were weapons, tools created for war. That was how the galaxy saw them. Maybe that was all they would ever be. The next morning, sensors detected the Cravath fleet entering the sector. There were over 24,000 bioships, the largest force the swarm had ever assembled. Every civilian station began evacuating. Families packed their belongings and fled to the inner systems. The combined human and concordant fleet prepared for battle. Human ships formed the vanguard. Concordant vessels took positions for long-range support. It was a formation that should not work. Two completely different military philosophies forced together by necessity. Admiral Kang stood on the bridge of his new flagship. His old ship was still being repaired. He looked at the tactical display. The odds were even worse this time. But his fleet was not alone anymore. They had allies. It was not much, but it was something. He opened a channel to all ships, human and alien. His voice was steady and calm. "This is Admiral Kang. The enemy is here. They outnumber us. They want to destroy everything we are protecting. We will not let them. Not today, not ever. All ships prepare for combat. Let's show them what we can do together." The Cravath swarm advanced. The human fleet moved to meet them. The concordant forces followed. And for the first time in history, humans and aliens went into battle side by side, not as separate forces, but as one. The price of violence was high, but the cost of doing nothing was higher. They all understood that now. They would fight. They would bleed. They would survive together. Velshara commanded the concordant defense forces from her flagship. She was a military coordinator, one of the few species in the concordant with real combat experience. But even she had never seen anything like this. The human fleet was rushing toward certain death. Her tactical display showed the numbers clearly. 147 human ships against 8,000 Cravath vessels. The mathematics were simple. The humans would be destroyed in minutes. She had to warn them. She opened a communication channel to Admiral Kang. She planned to thank the humans for their brave gesture and order them to retreat. Instead, Kang asked for tactical data. He wanted to know the Cravath formation. He wanted to know where the civilians were. He wanted to know the locations of important stations. He spoke like someone who expected to win. Velshara sent the information. She watched as the human fleet formed up. Their formation was strange, aggressive. They were not moving like concordant ships with their smooth, energy-saving paths. They were burning their engines at full power, accelerating at speeds that should kill their crews. The Cravath swarm sensed new prey. A large portion of their fleet turned toward the humans. Velshara calculated how long the human fleet would last. 12 minutes at most. She felt sick. These brave fools had come to help, and she was about to watch them die. Then the first human weapons fired. Velshara had seen concordant weapons. They were elegant. Particle beams that precisely disabled enemy systems. Gravity weapons that pulled ships out of formation. Weapons designed to minimize damage and allow for surrender. Human weapons were not like that. Missiles streaked across space. They carried nuclear warheads, weapons banned by every civilized convention in the galaxy. Kinetic rounds traveled at incredible speeds, punching through Cravath bioships like they were paper. Lasers, not the weak cutting tools used by concordant forces, but massive weapons that could boil away armor in seconds. The Cravath ships that took hours for concordant forces to disable were destroyed in seconds. Velshara watched in shock as human weapons tore through the swarm formation. In 3 minutes, the humans had killed more Cravath than her entire fleet had destroyed in the past week. But the firepower was not the most shocking thing. It was how the humans fought. They moved like hunters, like predators. They used destroyed Cravath ships as cover. They created ambush zones. They worked together with perfect coordination, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be. On the research station, Talrin watched the battle through his sensors. His 12-minute prediction was completely wrong. 30 minutes into the fight, the Cravath assault force was in chaos. He watched as human Marines led by Lieutenant Commander Choi boarded a damaged Cravath command ship. The video feeds from the boarding action made Talrin feel sick. The humans fought the Cravath bioforms in close quarters. They used explosives in zero gravity. They moved through the ship like they had trained for this exact situation. They were not just winning. They were hunting. Choi led his team deeper into the Cravath ship. The bioforms were 3 times larger than humans. They had claws that could tear through metal. They had acid that could melt armor. But the enhanced Marines did not hesitate. They fought with a efficiency that seemed impossible. Choi planted charges on what looked like a coordination node. His team moved to the next one. They worked fast. Every second counted. Behind them, the Cravath bioforms tried to stop them. The Marines held them back with steady fire and tactical positioning. On the Indomitable, Captain Yoon watched the tactical display. She saw a small group of Cravath ships trying to flank the human formation. Before she could give orders, a message came from the research station. It was Talrin. He had detected the flanking movement and was sending her the exact coordinates. It was the first real cooperation between humans and the Concordate. Yoon sent 3 destroyers to intercept. The Cravath scouts never had a chance. Talrin watched the destroyers work. They were so fast, so deadly. He felt grateful and terrified at the same time. Dr. Park sat in his station on the Indomitable. He was monitoring alien communication frequencies. He could hear the voices of Concordate officers across the sector. He heard their fear. Not fear of the Cravath. Fear of the humans. One transmission cut through everything else. It was Velshara speaking to her superiors. Her voice shook as she spoke. These are not saviors. These are apex predators that happen to be on our side. I do not know which terrifies me more, the swarm or our rescuers. Park felt his heart sink. He had spent his whole life dreaming of this moment. First contact, humanity meeting the wider galaxy. He imagined friendship, understanding, peace. Instead, the aliens saw humans as weapons. As monsters, Admiral Kang saw the same problem. The humans were winning the battle, but they might be losing something more important, the respect of the species they came to save. He made a decision. He would end this battle as quickly as possible. He studied the Cravath formation. The swarm operated as a hive mind. They needed coordination nodes to work together. Destroy the nodes and the swarm would fall apart, but the nodes were deep inside the Cravath formation. Protected by thousands of ships, Kang ordered a risky move. He would send fast attack corvettes straight into the heart of the swarm. Their mission was to find and destroy the coordination nodes. It was a suicide mission. Everyone knew it. But when Kang asked for volunteers, every corvette captain raised their hand. Commander Lee Namgil led the corvette squadron. 12 small ships against thousands of Cravath vessels. They accelerated to maximum speed and dove into the swarm. Their shields flickered and died under the constant fire. Their armor melted away. But they kept going. Lee found the first coordination node. It was a massive bioship, 3 times larger than his corvette. He fired every weapon he had and rammed his ship directly into it. The node exploded. Lee died instantly. The other corvettes found 2 more nodes. They destroyed both, but only 3 corvettes made it back. The sacrifice was not in vain. Without their coordination nodes, the Cravath formation collapsed into chaos. The swarm became thousands of individual ships with no plan, no coordination, no direction. Kang ordered the full fleet to advance. The human ships tore through the confused Cravath forces. It was not a battle anymore. It was an execution. Velshara watched and felt cold. This was what humans did. This was how they fought, with total overwhelming violence. 6 hours after the first shot was fired, the Cravath assault force was destroyed. Every single one of the 8,000 bioships was dead. The human fleet had lost 23 ships. Over 4,000 humans were dead. But the Velkin sector was safe. Admiral Kang opened a communication channel to all Concordat stations. He offered medical help. He offered supplies. He offered anything the aliens needed. The response was silence. The Concordat species did not know what to say. They did not know how to process what they had just seen. Finally, Velshara responded. Her voice was strained and careful. She accepted the offer of help. But she asked the human ships to stay where they were. The Concordat leadership needed time to decide how to respond to all of this. On the research station, Talron made a decision. He had activated the beacon that brought the humans. By Concordat law, that made him responsible for everything that happened next. He requested permission to talk directly with the human fleet. Permission was granted, but reluctantly. His first conversation was with Dr. Park. They were both scientists, both curious about the universe, but they came from such different worlds. Talron looked at the human on his screen. Park looked tired and sad. Talron asked the question that scared him most. What kind of world creates beings like you? Park was quiet for a moment. Then he answered with simple, terrible honesty, one that does not forgive weakness. Talron understood then. The humans had not chosen to be violent. They had been forced to be violent. They came from a world so dangerous that only the strong survived. They had evolved to fight because anything else meant death. The conversation ended. Talron sat alone in his station. Outside, the human fleet waited. They had saved his people. Billions of lives were safe because of them. But everyone was afraid of them. It was not fair. It was not right. But Talron could not change how people felt. He could only hope that someday the galaxy would see what he was starting to understand. The humans were not monsters. They were survivors, and maybe that made all the difference. The research station floated in the dark silence of space. Talron stood at his console, watching numbers scroll across the screen. For 3 years he had studied the stars from this station. Every day was the same. Until today. The gravity sensor showed something impossible. Talron checked them twice, then 3 times. The readings were clear. Something massive was coming out of dark space. Something that should not exist. He called his supervisor. Within minutes, every scientist on the station crowded around his screen. They watched in silence as thousands of ships appeared on their sensors. The vessels were unlike anything in their databases. They were biological, living ships that moved like insects in a swarm. Talron felt his hands shake. He knew what these were. Everyone in the galaxy knew the stories. The Cravath swarm, they consumed entire worlds. They turned civilizations into empty dust. And now they were here, in the Velkin sector. The station sent out emergency signals. Help would not arrive in time. The nearest defense fleet was weeks away. Talron did the math in his head. The Cravath had enough ships to destroy every station, every colony, every living being in the sector. His people would die. Billions would die. His supervisor made a difficult choice. She activated the ancient emergency beacon. It was old technology, from a time when the galaxy was more dangerous. The beacon would send a distress call to every intelligent species in range. Even the dangerous ones, even the species they tried to avoid, even the humans. Talron had studied humans in school. His teachers called them myths, dangerous myths. They said humans came from a death world, a planet so hostile that survival was almost impossible. They said humans were violent, unpredictable, and too dangerous to contact. The Galactic Concordat had decided long ago to keep them isolated. But the beacon was active now. The signal traveled through space at faster than light speeds. Somewhere on a distant world called Earth, humans would receive the message. Would they answer? Would they even care? On Earth, Admiral Kang De-sung sat in a meeting room deep underground. Around him, leaders from every nation argued. The beacon signal had arrived 30 minutes ago. They all saw the same data. An entire sector of alien civilizations was about to be destroyed. Kang was old enough to remember the unification wars. He had fought in battles that killed millions. He had made decisions that still haunted his dreams. He looked at the holographic display showing the alien sector. So many lives, so far away. A politician spoke up. Why should Earth care? These aliens had never contacted humanity. They kept humans isolated like dangerous animals. Let them solve their own problems. Another voice disagreed. This was humanity's chance. A chance to show the galaxy what humans really were. Not monsters. Not savages. Protectors. The debate lasted 47 minutes. Then the vote was called. The decision was made. Earth would send help. Kang stood and walked to the communications center. He sent orders to the 3rd Expeditionary Force. Captain Yoon Hyeon received them on her flagship, the Indomitable. She had been waiting for this moment her entire life. Yoon gathered her crew. The faces looking back at her were young, determined, and scared. She could see the fear in their eyes. They all knew what they were about to do. They were going to fly into unknown space. They were going to fight an enemy they had never seen. They might not come back. She spoke clearly and calmly. She told them the truth. The concordate species thought humans were dangerous. They thought humans were too violent to join their peaceful civilization. Today, humanity would show them what that violence could protect. Today, humanity would answer a cry for help. Not because they asked for permission. Not because they wanted praise. Because it was right, the crew cheered. Yoon felt pride swell in her chest. These were her people. Born on a world that tried to kill them every day. Shaped by ice ages and plagues and wars. Survivors. Fighters. Protectors. Dr. Park Ji-won sat in his laboratory on the Indomitable. Around him were files on every known alien species. He had spent 20 years studying them. He dreamed of the day humans would meet them. He imagined conversations, friendships, shared knowledge. Now that day was here, and it would begin with war. He studied the Cravath data. The swarm was a hive mind. Individual ships were not intelligent. They followed commands from central nodes. Kill the nodes and the swarm would fall apart. It sounded simple. It would not be simple. He also studied the concordate species. They were peaceful. They had evolved on safe worlds with plenty of food and water. They had never needed to develop weapons like humans. Their wars were small, limited, almost polite. They would not understand what humans were about to do. Lieutenant Commander Choi Byung-ho prepared his Marines. They were enhanced soldiers, their bodies modified with genetic changes and mechanical implants. They could survive in extreme cold, extreme heat, and even brief exposure to vacuum. They were faster and stronger than normal humans. They were designed to win. Choi looked at his reflection in a mirror. He barely recognized himself. The enhancements had changed him, made him something more than human. Sometimes he wondered if he was still human at all. Then he remembered why he volunteered for this. To protect those who could not protect themselves. The fleet prepared to leave. 147 ships. Carriers, battleships, destroyers, and small fast attack ships. It was the largest military force Earth had ever sent beyond their solar system. On the research station, Talron watched the Cravath draw closer. He calculated times and distances. The station had maybe 36 hours before the swarm arrived. After that, everyone here would die. He recorded messages for his family. Goodbye messages. Final words. Then his sensors detected something new. Ships were coming through a relay gate. A gate that should not be active. A gate that led to human space. Talron stared at the readings. It was impossible. The humans could not have arrived so fast, but they had. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Velkin sector. Before them was a sea of stars. Peaceful stations. Colonies full of families. And, beyond them, the writhing darkness of the Cravath swarm. Admiral Kang sat in his command chair. He looked at the tactical display. His fleet against thousands of enemy ships. The odds were terrible. His officers knew it. His crew knew it. But no one said anything. They had come to fight. Kang opened a communication channel. He broadcast on all concordate frequencies. His voice was calm and clear. He spoke in perfect galactic standard, the common language of the concordate. This is Admiral Kang Dae-sung of the United Earth Fleet. We received your distress call. We are here to help. Get your civilians to safety. We will handle the rest. On the research station, Talrin heard those words. He felt something he had not felt in days. Hope. The humans had come. The Deathworlders had answered. He did not know if they would win. But at least his people would not die alone. The human fleet began to move forward. Captain Yoon gave orders on the Indomitable. Weapons powered up. Shields activated. Marines moved to their boarding pods. Engineers checked every system twice. The Cravath swarm detected the new arrivals. Thousands of bioships changed course. They moved toward the human fleet like a dark wave. They had consumed hundreds of civilizations. They had destroyed thousands of worlds. They did not fear these newcomers. They should have. 6 months passed. The Velkin sector was rebuilt. Human engineers worked alongside Concordat architects. New stations rose where old ones had been destroyed. Defense platforms watched the borders. Life slowly returned to normal. Earth established its first permanent embassy on Thelis Prime. Ambassador Kim Soo-jin represented humanity's interests. She was a veteran diplomat who had negotiated peace during Earth's darkest conflicts. Now she faced a different challenge, making humanity acceptable to species who feared them. The cooperation was productive but uncomfortable. Cultural differences created constant problems. Humans worked too fast, made decisions too quickly, were too willing to take risks. The Concordat species preferred careful planning. Long discussions. Consensus building. Both sides had to learn patience. Captain Yoon received a promotion to Commodore. She was given command of the Joint Patrol Force, a combined human and Concordat fleet that protected the borders. Her flagship was still the Indomitable, now repaired and upgraded with alien technology. Her second-in-command was Relkan, the Valoran captain who survived by learning human tactics. Their relationship was professional but strained. Relkan respected Yoon's effectiveness, but he remained uncomfortable with human methods. The violence, the willingness to accept casualties, it went against everything he was taught. During a routine patrol, they encountered a refugee convoy, hundreds of civilian ships fleeing from Cravath-controlled space. The people were terrified, traumatized by months under swarm occupation. Many were injured. All were hungry. Yoon ordered immediate evacuation and medical assistance. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. Marines helped carry the wounded. Medical teams treated injuries. Supply officers distributed food and water. Relkan watched in surprise. He expected military coldness. Instead, he saw compassion. Later, he spoke to Yoon privately. "I expected you to be harder." Yoon looked at him with tired eyes. "We know what it is like to be afraid. We fight so others do not have to live that way." Relkan began to understand something important. Humans were not cruel. They were protective. Dr. Park established the Institute for Human Concordat Relations, a research facility dedicated to building understanding between species. His team included both human and alien scientists. They studied language, culture, psychology, and history. His star student was a young Velaran named Kisra. She studied human psychology with fascination and fear. She asked difficult questions. How do you live knowing what you are capable of? How do you sleep knowing your species has always been violent? Park answered honestly. We do not sleep well. We carry the weight of our history. We know we came from a dangerous world. We survived by becoming dangerous ourselves. But we also survived by cooperating, by building societies, by choosing to be more than our worst nature. That is what your people need to understand. Yes, we can be monsters, but we choose not to be. Not all Concordat species accepted human integration. A radical group called the Purity Coalition emerged. They argued that humanity's presence corrupted the peaceful nature of their civilization. They wanted humans expelled from Concordat space, permanently. The coalition committed terrorist attacks against human facilities. Bombs exploded in embassies. Mixed species stations were sabotaged. Several humans were killed. Many more were injured. The violence shocked both sides. This was supposed to be a peaceful civilization. The situation escalated when the coalition captured a human transport ship. 200 civilian colonists were taken hostage. The coalition leader, a charismatic speaker named Vornak, made his demands public. Humanity must withdraw from Concordat space, or the hostages would be executed. Admiral Kang, now Fleet Admiral and commander of all human forces in concordate space, faced an impossible choice. A military rescue would confirm every fear about human violence, but abandoning the hostages would betray everything humanity stood for. Talaran volunteered to mediate. He had become an unofficial bridge between humans and the Concordate. He reached out to the Purity Coalition, offered to discuss their concerns publicly. The coalition agreed. They saw an opportunity to spread their message. The debate was broadcast across the entire sector. Vornak made his case with passion. Humanity was too violent, too unpredictable. Their presence would inevitably lead to more conflict. Better to remove them now before they corrupted everything. Talaran responded with facts. He presented casualty statistics from the Cravath Wars. Human forces absorbed most of the losses while protecting Concordate civilians. He showed recordings of human medics treating wounded aliens, human engineers rebuilding destroyed stations, human ships responding to every distress call regardless of species. Then he made his strongest argument. You fear humans because they are capable of violence. But I have learned something. Every species is capable of violence. We have simply been fortunate enough to never need it. The Cravath changed that. They showed us the universe is not safe. Peace is not guaranteed. Humanity did not bring violence to us. They brought the ability to survive it. While Talaran debated, Commodore Yoon prepared a rescue operation. But she did something unexpected. She requested Concordate officers to lead the assault. Relkin and his Valoran commandos would execute the rescue. They were trained by humans, but they would use Concordate protocols. The operation was carefully planned. Relkan's team would infiltrate the captured ship, locate the hostages, neutralize the terrorists, all with minimal casualties. It was the Concordate way, but enhanced with human efficiency. The rescue went perfectly. Relkan's commandos moved through the ship with precision. They disabled security systems, avoided detection. When they finally engaged the terrorists, the fight was brief and controlled. The hostages were freed with only minor injuries. It proved something important. Concordate forces could adopt effective tactics without losing their identity. They could be strong without being cruel. They could protect without becoming monsters. They learned from humans, but they remained themselves. The Purity Coalition fell apart after the rescue. Vornak was captured and faced trial. During his interrogation, he admitted something surprising. I was never afraid humans would destroy us. I was afraid we would become like them. I was wrong. We are not becoming human. We are learning from them. There is a difference. Public opinion shifted dramatically. Polls across Concordate space showed increasing acceptance of human integration. Not universal acceptance, not everywhere, but enough to build on, enough to give hope. Commodore Yoon attended a memorial ceremony on a Valoran colony. She was nervous, worried about how the civilians would react to her. Instead, families approached her with gratitude. They thanked her for saving their loved ones during the Cravath Wars. One mother gave her a traditional peace charm. Yoon broke down. She had carried so much guilt, so much pain. She thought the galaxy saw her as a monster. But here, in this peaceful colony, she was seen as a protector. It changed something inside her. Maybe humanity would be accepted after all. Kisra completed her dissertation on human psychology. Her conclusion surprised even Dr. Park. Humans are not fundamentally different from other species. They are simply more honest about the capacity for violence that exists in all thinking beings. Their honesty makes them better at controlling it. Talaran received an honorary commission in the United Earth Fleet. It was symbolic. But the ceremony was attended by officials from both human and concordate governments. Admiral Kang personally presented the insignia. You were the first to believe we were more than weapons. You were right. Sergeant Ko Min-ji began a relationship with a concordate medical officer. It was controversial on both sides, but they made it work. Min-ji told her partner something that captured everything. I was created to fight. You help me remember there is more to life than war. The High Assembly announced a vote on full human membership. It would happen in 6 months. The outcome was uncertain, but for the first time it felt possible, real. Within reach, Ambassador Kim worked tirelessly. She arranged cultural exchanges, joint military exercises, economic partnerships. She met with representatives from every member species. Some were friendly, some were hostile. Most were cautiously hopeful. On Earth, debates raged. Some factions argued that joining the Concordat would weaken human independence. Others saw it as humanity's destiny, to become citizens of the galaxy, not conquerors, not invaders, just people taking their place among the stars. Dr. Park stood in his office late one night. He looked at the data he had collected over 6 months. Surveys, interviews, cultural studies. The numbers showed progress. Slow progress, but real progress. Humanity and the Concordat were learning to live together. He thought about that first distress signal, the beacon that changed everything. If Talrin had not activated it, none of this would have happened. Billions would be dead. The Concordat would have fallen, and humanity would still be isolated, alone, unknown. One decision. One person willing to take a risk. One call for help. It changed the galaxy. Not in the way anyone expected, but maybe in a better way, a way that gave both sides hope for the future. The vote was coming. In 6 months, the galaxy would decide. Would humanity be accepted as full members? Would they finally have a place among the stars? No one knew, but everyone hoped, and sometimes hope was enough to build a future on.